Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Jeremy Leffler and I work in the Policy Office in the Division of Institution and Award Support at the National Science Foundation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another day of sessions at the Spring NSF Grants Conference. And I'm now pleased to present this session, which will cover the NSF proposal submission modernization efforts and the move from FastLane to Research.gov. And this session is being presented by Stephanie Yee from the NSF Division of Information Systems at NSF.
Hello, thank you for coming to the proposal submission and modernization update, and welcome to the NSF Virtual Grants Conference. My name is Stephanie Yee, and I'm an IT project manager here at NSF, and my primary role is the operations and maintenance lead over Research.gov, FastLane, and the Grants.gov integration. I work really closely with IT Help Central and also serve as a liaison to the business office, policy, and our developers. For today's agenda, we have a lot to cover. I'd like to highlight, first off, NSF's transition away from DUNS IDs to the UEI number implementation. I like to highlight the new login feature for Research.gov, the login.gov option. And I'll be spending most of my time talking about the migration strategy and timeline to moving proposal submission from FastLane to Research.gov. I'll be highlighting some of our most recent enhancements and a look ahead of what is still remaining. And I'll spend most of the time today on the Research.gov demo and the proposal submission features. I'll conclude the presentation with a little bit on how to provide us feedback and some of your training and demo resources that will be helpful for your community. So first, I'd like to talk about the NSF transition to SAM UEI implementation. So NSF SAM's UEI implementation began as early as February 28th. So we replaced DUNS number with the SAM.gov assigned UEI numbers. This transition was fully effective April 4th of this year. We have fully transitioned. So what this means is that the SAM business name and physical addresses will no longer be updatable in the FastLane system. You have to go to SAM.gov to make those changes. Also, any sub-recipients or sub-awards named in a proposal are also required to obtain a SAM UEI number, and they still must register in Research.gov. However, they do not need to be registered in SAM. DUNS numbers will only be displayed for historical purposes, but for proposals going forward, we will be fully on the UEI number. And you must have a valid and active SAM registration. And I want to also mention that we are aware of delays on SAM.gov renewals. They are taking a little longer than usual. So please, if you are up for renewal, please take steps to do that much well in advance before that expires. I'd like to transition to login.gov. So this is a screenshot of the login options that people have as they access our system. On the left-hand side is the most popular way to log in, which is using the NSF ID. The second is the organizational credentials. Universities who are part of the In Common Federation have an option for people to log in using their university's credentials. And then on the right-hand side, we introduced login.gov. So this is a federal-wide initiative to have a single login.gov credentials to access federal websites. I highly suggest that people begin to get familiar and get an account for login.gov and associate that with your NSF ID. This will make logging in easier going forward, but however, there is a vision where we will be moving towards a login.gov login and that the other two will not be supported in the future. So just get familiar with us and make sure that there's no issues linking your accounts. So finally, I'd like to transition to the migration of proposal preparation and submission from FastLane to Research.gov. So goodbye, FastLane, and hello, Research.gov. We are pretty heavily looking at solicitations and moving aggressively with the organization to move solicitations to be a Research.gov only submission option. We are targeting to remove the ability to create new proposals in FastLane, effective when the new PAPG 23-1 goes into effect in January 2023. So this is a snapshot of what solicitations might look like if they are a Research.gov only submission type. So at the top, there is a section called Important Notice and Revision Notes, and we have a paragraph there if a solicitation has been marked for this, noting the Important Notice 147, which notifies people we are moving proposals from FastLane to Research.gov. And FastLane is no longer a submission option. I want to highlight the third bullet that grants.gov will always be an option for all solicitations and PDs at NSF. That will not change because that is a federal-wide requirement that we will always meet. On the next slide is a slightly different opportunity that NSF offers. So these are called program descriptions. So program descriptions are different from solicitations, meaning that they don't deviate from the PAPG requirements. So NSF has a number of these for each directorate. And the challenge with this, in terms of moving them over to Research.gov only, is that on the websites, all the program descriptions share the same boilerplate language. So how do we navigate, indicating which program descriptions will no longer use FastLane and which ones still do? So what we've done is we updated a link on all the program description pages that will take users to a PDF document. So this is just a little bit of a larger view of what that looks like. It's an alert on the right-hand side of the page. And on this side here is just a smaller view of what the PDF looks like. So we have greater control on the PDF. The PDF is updated pretty frequently. The last time we updated this was on May 13th. So what this PDF does is it breaks out the program descriptions by directorate. So you can go to each directorate and see which PDs are a Research.gov only and which ones, and anything that's not on there, are both available in Research.gov and FastLane. One thing to note on this page is there is an effective date. So we give 90 days notice if a solicitation or opportunity needs to be a Research.gov only. And so for most of these, there is an effective date. We have effective dates as early as March, but if you look at the documents, there are some that are as far out as September and August. So this is just giving a heads up for the community to start thinking about this and start preparing your proposals in Research.gov. So migrating proposal preparation and submission from FastLane to Research.gov. Why are we doing this? It's a bit of a background on this. FastLane was launched in 1994. So this was 28 years ago, and it is no longer current technology. Research.gov was built on modernized architecture, and this really helps us allow to take advantage of more modern technology. So a lot of the things that are holding us back at NSF is FastLane. There's a lot more modernized features that we would like to take advantage of, but we can't do that without moving to a newer platform. In addition, Research.gov has been built with an interface in mind that's more modern, more intuitive, that doesn't require a lot of training to use. So we're really trying to take advantage of the newer technology, newer screens, and newer interface. So Research.gov has been developed incrementally, and we're moving a lot of the features as fast as we can. We started this in 2018, and we're trying to move more and more functionality faster until this deadline of 2023. So I'd also like to note that FastLane also encompasses features that are not proposal submissions. So for an example, we still have things like honorary awards, reviewer functions, panelist functions. Those will still remain in FastLane in the meantime, but we are looking to decommission those as soon as we can. But that timeline will go beyond January 2023. And the last bullet I mentioned already, grants.gov will continue to be a submission option for NSF. All right, so migrating FastLane to Research.gov, how are we doing this? So as I mentioned, we are incrementally moving opportunities over to a Research.gov only. We're removing FastLane as an option. We're trying to move this as fast as we can. We are looking at solicitations that have deadlines that pass, and we can migrate those. And we're also targeting solicitations that are being drafted. We're also completing the remainder of the proposal functionalities. We're not there yet. We still have a lot of functionality remaining in FastLane. In addition, we are very aggressively and actively working with NSF internal staff. So they too are trying to learn a new system. So we are meeting with them on a very regular basis, highlighting what changes we've made, to listen to feedback that they have on the system and implementing those changes. And we're really trying to bolster and update and make our training resources and guides more useful and more robust and updated as we get feedback. And we're also working very closely with NSF policy to make sure the PAP guide is updated in conjunction with our changes. So Research.gov proposal preparation, what are the advantages for principal investigators and research administrators? So we were requested to have this slide from previous conferences on, what are the takeaways that we need to know that are advantages for the Research.gov system. So in a nutshell, all of these are meant to reduce burden, is to have an easier proposal preparation process. So the navigation screens in Research.gov are just more intuitive, they're more dynamic. They are, you are only shown screens that you need to see. There's immediate feedback. So one thing about FastLane, which I don't like, is you can work on a proposal for a very long time, but you don't discover the issues that you need to correct until the time of submission. So this is more in line of what we are used to in terms of form validations today. So Research.gov is more of you get immediate feedback on whether or not your section is good or not, getting validations real time at upload versus waiting to the end. The third advantage is faster uploads. People who are familiar with the FastLane uploads know that an upload could take minutes, depending on how large the document is. So, instead of 30 to 90 seconds per upload, in Research.gov, it's less than a second. And, for everyone, the power of Research.gov is the compliance checking. We are performing approximately 450 compliance checks in Research.gov across all the submission types versus only 56 compliance checks in FastLane. We're just doing a lot better, all around checks on the proposals in Research.gov. Also for the PI, they probably are more interested in, it's a higher quality proposal in Research.gov. You may or may not notice that in FastLane, a lot of the times the images and graphs, the resolution is compromised in a FastLane proposal. And that's because when you upload a proposal, we're stitching it back together, we're redistilling that PDF. And sometimes that quality gets lost in that translation. In Research.gov, we do not touch the PDF. All graphs, all images maintain their original, beautiful, pristine, crisp self. And, the ultimate goal is to reduce and minimize return without reviews. We want to make sure this proposal is exactly the way we want it and the way you intended. I'd like to talk a little about proposal preparation tips. This is a culmination of some of the most commonly asked questions, and this is just to kind of level set the behaviors of both so you know what to expect. So FastLane and Research.gov are two different systems. They have two different databases, if you will. So if you're creating a proposal in FastLane, that information cannot be transferred easily to Research.gov. Those systems are separate. The same applies to any sort of pre-submission type of records. So what I mean is letters of intent or preliminary proposals. If they are submitted or created in one system, they cannot be seen by the other. So if you create a letter of intent for an opportunity at NSF and you prepared it in FastLane, if you prepare a full proposal in Research.gov, Research.gov would not be able to find that letter of intent. The same goes for separately submitted collaborative sets. So this is a situation where multiple institutions might be submitting a proposal together. All collaborators have to stay in one system or another. So you can't have one entity in FastLane and the rest in Research.gov. Everyone has to start in the same system. Same goes for proposal file updates and budget revisions. So once you submit a proposal in one system, it has to stay in that system. If you need to make edits or make edits to the budget, you have to make those edits in that originating system. And the last bullet is just to assure you that all proposals are evaluated the same way. The proposal looks the same, no matter which system you use. So people are not able to know right away the differences between the two systems. They're evaluated the same way. So this slide is where we are and what's ahead. There's a lot of small font on this page. I don't expect everyone to read everything, but the takeaway I have here is take a look at current capabilities column and the future capabilities column. We're almost at the end. We have successfully implemented the majority of the capabilities and proposal submission in FastLane in Research.gov, and that's the space over to the left. On the right-hand side is future capabilities, and we have a few big ticket items still remaining, and I'll go over a little bit of what's not there in Research.gov yet. So on proposal types, SBIR and STTR proposals are not yet in Research.gov. We're looking at a fall release for that. And we also have postdoctoral fellowships, which are proposals and opportunities that require a reference letter writer. So that is a very specific requirement, and that particular piece is not ready yet. The second major piece that's not available yet is the grants.gov integration. So today, if you submit a proposal in grants.gov, in its core, it is a FastLane proposal. So if you submit it today in grants.gov and you need to make an adjustment, you need to change something on the proposal, or later in its cycle, you need to change something in the budget, you have to go to FastLane to do that because it is still going to a FastLane system. At some point, we will have to make this transition. We will be changing over grants.gov proposals to be Research.gov proposals sometime in the fall of this year, fall of 2022. The last big ticket item are post-award actions supplemental funding. So currently supplemental funding is not supported in Research.gov, but we will be looking towards a fall release to move that over. This slide is just to remind you of the January 2023 key migration milestone dates. So again, in January 2023, we are looking to decommission the ability to create new FastLane proposals. I'm going to take a moment to talk a little bit about the recent Research.gov proposal enhancements. We had quite a large release on the May 2nd, 2022 release. So some of our Research.gov proposal enhancements available as of May 2nd, we have introduced a new proposal type. So we are now supporting postdoc fellowships. So these are proposals specifically for fellowship solicitations that do not require reference letter writers. So as of today, June 2022, we are actively looking at rewriting all the postdoc fellowship solicitations. This is because currently they are very FastLane centric. Some of the instructions are very FastLane specific. So we made a deliberate decision that we will not enable postdoc solicitations in Research.gov until the solicitations have been rewritten and republished. So stay tuned for that. We expect to do that very shortly. We're actively doing that. So just be aware that as of today, they're not available until we re-clear those solicitations. In addition, we've implemented new proposal features. So some of the features implemented is the new project data form. So this project data form does not apply to all proposals. It only applies to specific proposals or opportunities in the Directorate of Education and Human Resources. And in that, very specifically to the Division of Undergraduate Research. We've also added the ability to select secondary units of consideration. This is the ability for applicants to designate a proposal that might be considered or co-reviewed by other places at NSF. And also the opportunity to upload multiple other supplementary documents. Before May 2nd, we only allowed one file in this section. I think a lot of people will be happy that we are now allowing multiple files in this section, so people will no longer have to merge documents to fit that section. So the project data form is available as of May 2nd. So as I mentioned before, this is only impacting opportunities or programs that require it. So this is just a really quick screenshot of what it looks like. And secondary units of consideration, I will be going over in the demo, so I'll be very brief about this slide. And as I mentioned before, you can upload multiple documents, and I will show you that also in the demo. So I'm about to go to the demo, and I'm going to go over some highlights of a basic preparation of a proposal. I'll go over the proposal setup wizard, the proposal main page, some of the document uploads and compliance errors and warning messages, the budget, and then, if I have time, a little bit of the highlights of the recent enhancements. So here I am, I'm on the Research.gov website. I am not logged in yet. So this is what it looks like to an unauthenticated user. So there's two ways to log in from this screen. You can click on sign in on the upper right-hand corner, or you can go ahead and click on the function you would like to access. So I'm going to go ahead and click letters of intent and proposal here. There are three ways to log in: NSF ID to the left, organization credentials. So if your university is part of the In Common Federation, you can find it here and log in with your credentials at the university, and login.gov. But for this demo, I'm going to log in with my NSF ID. Because I clicked on prepare proposal link from the main page, I'm automatically taken here. So you'll be presented with a modal here that has a link that takes you to proposal submission capabilities, or you can continue to the proposal system. If you click on here, it'll take you to an about page that gives you a nice list of what is available and which is not available. So back to the screen, I'm going to click on continue. And here I'm presented, I'm logged in as a PI. So I have prepare new, in progress, and submitted updates. But even if you don't have a role, I want to highlight the demo environment that we have here at NSF. So anyone with an NSF ID has access to the demo system. So even if you're training or you have somebody that doesn't have a role that wants to get familiar with the system, everyone has access to the demo system. So I'm going to do most of my presentation on the demo site. So once you're on the demo site, you have lots of disclaimers and banners that remind you that you are on the demo site. So you will be presented with an orange banner up top in this demo watermark. And so for everyone using the demo, you are in the demo as a PI. So for the demo, you only have these two modules open for you. That's prepare new and looking at an in-progress proposal. At this time, we don't have a way to demo a submitted proposal. Most of the features that people are looking for are the proposal preparation sections. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the left-hand side and click on this drop-down button. So here is prepare new. What do you want to prepare? So we've broken out the types of submissions here. So you can select letter of intent, prelim proposal, full renewals, or accomplished-based renewals. For this demo, I'm just going to click on a basic full proposal. So I'm presented with this modal, and not all of you are going to see this. So this pops up if you have multiple organization affiliations. So some people have, multiple organizations, or if I click here, so my organization is National Science Foundation. So this will show here. I don't have any other organization affiliations. However, I did, prior to this meeting, added a role for a postdoc scholar. So if you are a person who is affiliated with an organization, but you're interested in applying for a postdoc fellow, you also have to add that role to yourself. I'm actually going to show that to you really quickly. When you go back to the login screen, this is back to the desktop. If you click on my profile and you click add a role, these are all the roles that you can add to yourself. And if you need to apply for a postdoc fellow, because I already have it, it's already grayed out for me, you would select the last option. No, prepare and manage proposals independently, unaffiliated, or postdoctoral fellowship. Okay, I'm going to go back to the demo site and continue with the full proposal. Because there's no active funding opportunities for postdoc fellows, I'm just going to start with a basic proposal. So on step one, the very first thing we ask is funding opportunity. This is a curated list. This is not a full comprehensive list of all opportunities at NSF, and this is on purpose. So as I mentioned before, not everything is available yet in Research.gov. So for example, STTR, SBIR is not in here yet. Because it's a manually curated list, sometimes we make mistakes, but we have gotten very good at this. So you can find opportunities that are in Research.gov only. As you type a number or a text, it will filter the list down to the opportunities that contain those letters. So I'm going to go ahead and create a proposal for 22534. Step two is where to apply. This is where we ask the user confirm where you are applying to. In this case, it is a read-only screen. So for most solicitations, you would not be able to change this. So there is a specific program that opportunity is going to. But for other opportunities, there may be more choices here. You might be able to select a different directorate or two or a couple of programs. So it all depends on how that solicitation is written. I mentioned earlier that we had implemented a new feature where you can indicate your proposal to go to other areas at NSF, and it is not done here. It is done later on after the proposal is created. Step three is proposal type. So these are all the proposal types we support at NSF. We show them all here, but we don't allow you to select it if it's not valid. If you hover over an option that is not available, we will tell you why it's not available. I'm going to go ahead and select research. Step four is proposal details. And here we ask you, are you submitting as a single proposal or are you submitting a separately submitted collab as a set? I'm going to quickly show you if I selected a collaborative set. So the second question we ask is, what is your role? Are you the lead? Are you the non-lead? No matter what you pick, as you notice down here, the title is prepended by text. And this is not something you can change. We do this deliberately and people cannot change it. So for collaborative research, it will always be prepended here. Another note about titles is you cannot add special characters here. It will notify you whether or not it is a special character, but not all special characters are eliminated. So for example, you can't add this, but you might be able to add an ampersand. We have fixed a minor issue where apostrophes were not being allowed. We are now allowing apostrophes in titles, so that would make a lot of people happy. Another question I get often is what other titles do we prepend in Research.gov? And it really quite depends on the type of proposal you're submitting. So for a basic research proposal, we don't prepend anything to the beginning of the title. But if you are creating a proposal for a rapid or for eager, or if it's a renewal, we will prepend the titles of those proposal types to the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward and click Prepare Proposal. So I have created my proposal. My temporary proposal number is 8647. We do have some disclaimer text that you are on a demo site. I'm going to scroll down here and get everybody situated with the organization of this page. So everything you've chosen in the proposal wizard prior is going to show up at the top here. So this is what I consider the proposal header section. This is where you have your title, your funding opportunity, where you apply the proposal type and submission type. So there are some things you can change here and some things that are set. So for example, funding opportunity, proposal, submission, and collaborative type cannot be changed after this point. We have a lot of questions about when we will be able to allow changing that information after the fact. Unfortunately, there's no plans to allow that. And that is deliberate because we build a lot of our proposal validations based on those selections, especially funding opportunity. So funding opportunity requirements are different, very different, and it would be very difficult for us to enforce a lot of our validations if we allow people to change the funding opportunity in the middle of the application. So at this time, we are not planning to do that. However, you can change proposal type, proposal title as much as you like. And you can also change where to apply. So I'm going to go and click, this is a new link as of May, manage where to apply. So as I mentioned here, as you apply to an opportunity, that is going to a particular program. So it is over here. But you can indicate as many other programs at NSF that you want your proposal to be considered or co-reviewed. Please note that this is a request. It is not a guarantee that it is being co-reviewed. It basically provides information for the primary program officer to make a determination on whether or not the proposal would be routed at NSF. So I'm going to go ahead and click a couple of random programs here to add to my list to the right-hand side. And as you notice on the right-hand side, for the programs selected in places 2, 3, and 4, I have a way to order this. So you can add as many as you like here, and then you can order them to how you like it as well. Notice that you cannot overtake the program that's in place number 1 because that is where the core program is. That's where this proposal is going. So we will not allow you to accidentally overwrite that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save my choices. And as you can see, all the choices I made are now added to the where to apply. And you can change this at any point before submission. I'd like to draw your attention to the right-hand side. This is where the due date is indicated. So sometimes this is read-only, meaning there's only one due date or it's due anytime. But for some solicitations, you do have to select a due date. All right. And down here on the proposal sections, I like to get you familiar with this. On the left-hand side is your proposal action. So these are things that you can do to your proposal. You can share it, you can print it, you can delete it. So these are the things that you can do. This is quite different than FastLane, which was very button oriented and very in the center. On the right-hand side are your sections. So this is broken up by required sections and sections that are optional. So in your required sections, these are the things you will see. If you are applying for a different solicitation, a letter of intent, or a different proposal type, this will change. So we are trying to make this, as relevant as possible to the opportunity that you are applying for. On the bottom are your optional sections. And since I'm here, I'm going to go over really quickly some of the changes we've made for other supplemental documents. As I mentioned, prior to May, we only allowed one file, but now we're allowing multiple files. This is really useful because a lot of times other supplemental documents might include documents that tend to be large or complicated, meaning in the way they might include letters, documents with letterheads, or documents with signatures. So one thing to note is Research.gov will not accept any PDF files in any sections that have permissions on them. So make sure your PDF documents are not locked. They're not restricted in any way. That is problematic with our system, and we can't read that file. So that is something to consider. All right. I first would like to show you proposal actions. So I always recommend people, when I'm showing them how to use the system, to share your proposal immediately. So only PIs can create proposals in Research.gov, and only that PI and those PIs can see the proposal. No one else at the institution can see it until you change the proposal access. So I'm going to go ahead and click Change Proposal Access. And in here, by default, the proposal is not shared. So I highly recommend for all PIs to, at a minimum, make sure view-only access is granted. But, I say go ahead and allow edit access. Notice there's a second checkbox here that says allow proposal submissions. So this is a preference to the PIs and a preference to the institutions. In my opinion, I think you should check this. You don't want to be in a situation where you forgot about the checkbox and then on deadline date, there's a scramble to find the PI to check the checkbox. So just be aware that if you forget to check this checkbox and it's ready to be submitted, that has to be changed. So proceed carefully. So I went ahead and allowed access to my AORs. The moment I do this, anyone from the AOR staff can see the proposal and they can edit the proposal. All right. The second thing I'm going to show you is manage personnel. So manage personnel is on the left-hand side, and this is where you have access to see your people on a proposal. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the manage personnel action button. I'm going to click here. And this is where you can add your people. So you can add your co-PIs, your senior personnel, and your other authorized user. So I'm going to go ahead and click add a co-PI. So for adding co-PIs and other authorized users, you have two ways of doing this. You can add them by NSF ID or by email address. I personally like using NSF IDs. It's very precise. So one thing to note about the roles, so for a co-PI, you can't add anyone that's not a PI. So if you entered an ID for someone you know that exists and they don't show up, a couple things may have happened. One is they're not a PI. So they have to go back and make sure that role is assigned to them. The second thing is maybe they were granted the PI role very recently. So one thing to note is that when you assign roles in Research.gov, there is a delay. It's approximately 30 minutes, but I like to be safe and say an hour. So make sure that when you're provisioning roles or requesting roles, just be aware that there is that delay. So we get a lot of calls of, I can't find somebody as I try to add them to the proposal. And the very first question we might ask you is, when did they get the role? Was it today? Was it, recently, or was it 2 weeks ago? And oftentimes it was a role that was provisioned very recently. So I'm going to go ahead and add George as my co-PI. And I'm gonna just really quickly click on other senior personnel. So other senior personnel, you have more flexibility. You can add by personnel name. You don't need to add by NSF ID. One thing to know about senior personnel is that at this time, unfortunately, they do not have access to the proposal. The only people who have access to the proposal are the PIs, co-PIs, other authorized users, and the AOR staff if you granted it to them. Okay, I'm going to click on other authorized user. So other authorized users are people that you want access to the proposal. They can do almost everything that the PI and the co-PI can do. They can edit all the sections. They can do almost all the same functions. There's only NSF IDs are the only way to add these. One rule that we have in our system is that other authorized users cannot also be on the proposal. So if I try to add George here, you won't be able to do that. We will say this person has already been added to the proposal. So that is a limitation on how other authorized user works. So it's very different than FastLane. FastLane, we provide like a PIN number, but for this is how you add an other authorized user. Okay. After I add these people, I would like to go back to the main proposal screen and go over some of the sections that people most call IT Central about. So each of these sections, I'm actually going to start with the cover sheet. The cover sheet is pretty straightforward. We do not get many calls from the front desk for this because it's pretty straightforward. We have very few required fields here, but make sure you review each section. I want to highlight this section here. This may or may not apply to your solicitation at all times, but I do like to point it out. So each solicitation may or may not have a requirement for a letter of intent or a prelim proposal. For this particular example, there is a requirement for a prelim proposal. And this is where you would enter this number here. So we do validate if the number exists, if it's valid in the system. I'm going to go ahead and click save so you can see the error message. So we do validate it. We are aware that there are many solicitations that might have multiple tracks, or this person may have created their prelim proposal in FastLane. So under those two circumstances, we have made this field optional. So making this field optional gives a lot of flexibility for those applying to solicitations that have multiple requirements. So when I say multiple tracks, some solicitations have 2 tracks or 2 different types of opportunities within that solicitation, and one might require prelim proposals and one may not. So having this field optional gives that flexibility for those applicants to proceed with their proposal without being stopped. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and leave this page. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on project description because that is a pretty large section in a section that has a lot of business rules embedded in it. And this is by far the section that people call IT App Central most about. It is a pretty big section. So for here, we do a lot of validations. We have validations on line spacing, on the presence of a broader impacts title. We are checking on page count, and we're also checking on some more technical details, which are down here. I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about margins and fonts. So you might have noticed I did not say margins and fonts, and that is because we have, for the meantime, put a pause on the validations that are done on fonts and margins. So this was a deliberate decision because when we rolled this out in 2018, we found that the font checks and the margin checks were a little problematic, and we wanted to take a step back to reevaluate on how we implement those. Some of the challenges we were facing were things such as, even the different word processing software versions were interpreting some of these things differently. a Microsoft version 2016 margin 1 inch is interpreted differently than a more recent version of Microsoft Word. We are seeing issues with LaTeX users. LaTeX users are having a little more problems with managing the margins on LaTeX files and even fonts, because LaTeX is not a Microsoft product, so the font families in LaTeX were not always being recognized. So we have taken a pause on that. Just through the transition period, and we will be revisiting and reintroducing some of these checks. But what have remained in place are line spacing checks. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about line spacing. So I've uploaded a document which is using Arial 10. And as you can see, a warning has popped up. Your file contains the following warnings. There should not be more than 6 lines per inch. So this is an example of a warning on a page. It does not stop submission. This is more of an indicator to you. It's a helpful indicator to say, hey, please double check your file and make sure it meets the following PAPG requirements. It doesn't stop submission. For Arial 10, I would say it's a little more prone to line spacing errors. I would say, just double check. One thing we do have in the FAQs is for Microsoft Word, if you're using Arial 10, you do have to force the line spacing in between the lines. So that is something that's, a little more cumbersome, but our recommendation at IT Hub Central is, there are 2 other fonts in the PAPG that allow a size 10 font. They are less likely to have a line spacing error. So I always recommend people to try out the other fonts. The second warning that we check on, or that is a hard stop, is broader impacts. So we do check the file to make sure broader impacts is on its own line with no other text around it. It does allow for numbering, but it's very small. So please be mindful of if you're using Roman numerals or if you're centering broader impacts. Sometimes centering broader impacts will add extra spaces on either side that you can't see that will be counted as extra characters. So just be careful on that. In addition, the checks will check for URLs, the presence for URLs. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this document and show you a URL error. So the PAPG prohibits the use of URLs. So if you have a URL document in your document, it will prevent submission. So what we are looking for are in the document, are there clickable links? Are there clickable links? And are there any text that looks like a link? So any text that begins with HTTP or www will produce a URL, error. I'm gonna go ahead and just keep a file here. So as you upload files, the last updated column will begin to update. You will see when the file was last touched. And then over on the right-hand side, you'll see the compliance key. So if there's no issues with the file, it will have a green check mark. I can go ahead and show you what a nice, lovely file looks like. In this way, administrators can easily scan a document and make sure that it is uploading correctly. All right. So no issues found. So this is what you like to see as an administrator. So the second section I would like to show you is senior personnel. So for senior personnel, this is a really useful page compared to FastLane because it combines all your people in one place. And this is a good way for you to expand all your people and see what documents are left for you to upload for. So this is a good way to take a look at what's going on. I'm just going to go ahead and expand one of the personnels and talk a little bit about biographical sketch and current pending support. So I'll start with current pending support. So as you know, NSF has two NSF approved formats for these two sections. You have a choice of using Science CV or the fillable PDFs. From a production support standpoint, I always prefer Science CV because at IT Up Central, when the calls come in, they are by far mostly fillable PDFs. The Science CV forms are nice because they are formatted in a way that is almost foolproof, but the fillable PDFs are a little more problematic, and I'll get into that a little bit more. So what we're finding with fillable PDFs is that there is an infinite amount of programs out in the world where you can fill in your PDFs. And a lot of them do things to that file that is unexpected. And sometimes they overwrite very important metadata or code in the PDF that makes Research.gov not recognize that file. So some of the common offenders that I know of off the top of my head are, for example, Dropbox has their own PDF editor that does change the metadata of the file and make it unrecognizable. Foxit Pro is another program that we know is a little bit problematic and can change some of the metadata. So just be mindful of what program you're using. If you encounter an issue where you're uploading a file and it is not recognized, but you're sure of it, please call IT Up Central and we can make that diagnosis right away. For current and pending support, we did implement a feature that is helpful for people using fillable PDFs. The current and pending support document is 27 pages long, and not everyone will use all 27 pages. So we have implemented a trimming feature. And here I have uploaded a fillable PDF, which is 27 pages long. So our system here will analyze that file page by page to detect whether or not that page has been filled in. Anything that is left blank, we will trim. So this is an example. I'm going to go and preview my file. And as you can see, this file has been trimmed to a lovely 3 pages. One thing to note about current and pending support, just to be mindful of, is the document can be quite large. And so I do want to put a caveat out there that we have seen very few cases of this, but I want you to be aware of, because of the intense processing on the current and pending support fillable PDF document. We have found some cases where if people were on unstable internet connections, the uploading of the current and pending support might fail, and that using a different connection or using a wired connection at the university or the institution will correct that upload. That is because this file is quite intensive and the processing that we do on the upload is heavy. So just be mindful of that if you are at a location which is not as strong as if you were plugged in. Okay. So I'm going to go back to talk a little bit about the single copy document. So what that means is that the reviewers do not see it. This is a private document only seen at NSF. This is a required document for every personnel, the collaborators, and other affiliation or COA documents. So this document is a spreadsheet and kind of like an Excel spreadsheet format. And it has pretty powerful validation. So I'm going to go ahead and upload a file that has invalid characters. So this is a very powerful tool. Unlike FastLane, there is no validations over there, but here we are able to detect which table, which column, which row needs to be corrected. So this is a very sensitive file, meaning that you can't just add things in there. Please don't change anything about the file. Don't change the width of the document. Don't just be mindful of that. So this will tell you exactly where the corrections need to be made. And just a comment, be mindful of invalid characters. So invalid characters, unfortunately, just due to how we are reading that file, sometimes foreign characters can be problematic. So just be careful on that. This is an example of someone using an address that is from Finland. And even though you can't see it, it is not a standard character that is typed on the US keyboard. So my recommendation on troubleshooting COA documents is if you are getting an invalid character error, just retype it. That almost always fixes the error. Also, just be mindful if you have a very large COA document, don't wait till the end of the day to upload a document with 300 people. Try to test that file as you go on. The number, I would say top 2 reasons why COA documents fail in this section is 1, invalid dates. So there is a date field here, last active date. Please don't put words in there. Put in a valid date of month, day, and year. Don't put words like present or currently. Just leave it blank. All right. And the second most common reason that people aren't able to upload this is an old and updated template. So we've had multiple variations of this template over time. We haven't updated it in a couple of years, but just if in doubt, just download a new fresh copy from the policy website. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the budget. So this is the budget screen, and I'm going to show you that you can hide the menu on the screen, which will increase your horizontal space. So this is a very dynamic and nice form. I think it's a step up from FastLane. So this form will do real-time validations as you type in. As you can see, it will tell me I cannot exceed 12 months. And it will also add up values at the top in real time. So this is very useful. You can also add years by adding blank years or copy from existing years. And also, it's a smarter form, meaning we won't show you sections that may not be relevant to you. So for example, if your opportunity does not allow cost sharing, we won't show that section to you. So this really reduces the amount of erroneous budgets, the need to correct them at a later point. You can also manage your senior personnel here. Some people may never take a salary. You can delete them completely from the budget. And you can do so. You can expand and collapse all your rows to see it in one shot. So one common question we get is, do we plan to introduce a downloadable template for the budget so you can work on the budget and then upload it later? Unfortunately, at this time, there are not plans to do that because there's so much power in this offline form. We did have a feature like this in FastLane, but to be honest, it did not work very well. And we think the trade-off is better if people are using the form directly because we are incorporating so much business validations and rules within the form. I'm going to go ahead and leave this page. And all the other sections are very similar. For the optional sections, the only thing I just wanted to highlight for some of your newer users is that any section that has this text at the bottom called single copy documents, they're just not seen. They are not seen by the reviewers. Occasionally, I get a IT Up Central ticket where people want to add addendum information in one of these sections. Don't do that. They will not be seen by reviewers. So that is all that I want to show on the deeper dive of the sections, but I wanted to go ahead and start talking about the inline help that you have, the resources you have while you're working on a proposal. So you always have helpful links on the page where you have direct links to specific sections of the PAP guide or videos on how to do something. And when you are in a section, I'm going to go back to the budget. There are something what we call blue info buttons. So you'll always have things like this that are embedded in each section where you can look up what a particular definition is or what a section means. We find this very helpful because, people don't like to open another browser to browse what things are. And we also like to put direct links to the solicitation itself so people can reference it easily. So for example, this project description here, we have quick links to that particular section on the PAPG and to the funding opportunity. All right. So this is all I had in mind to show you for our demo today. That was a really quick introduction to what a proposal preparation screen looks like and what the main page looks like. So I'm going to go ahead now and return back to the presentation and go over some of the resources that you have. So back to the presentation, providing feedback and why it is important. We want your feedback. So on all the Research.gov pages, there is an orange button at the very bottom of the footer of the website called feedback. And this is a great opportunity for you to provide feedback to NSF. It can be anonymous. And the point for this feedback form is, if you have a request, an enhancement request, or a recommendation on how we can do things better, how something can be experienced better, please put your feedback here. This goes to the business office here at NSF. It doesn't come to me. It does not go to IT Up Central. So the purpose is providing an honest feedback of what you would like to see, or provide a business case for something that's not, that you would like to see in the future. Our business office takes a look at that, and we do seriously consider and look at each feedback, and we forward it to the right people in terms of getting ideas of what to fix next or implement next. So I highly recommend that. It's also located at the top whenever you are on the demo site. And it's very useful because we have taken a lot of feedback from that to determine which features we implement or which bugs to fix in our upcoming releases. So a little bit about preparation demo site and the training resources. So most of the demo I performed was on the demo site. So the demo site, as I said, is available to anyone with an NSF ID. So this allows opportunities for anyone to browse the site and get familiar with the site and train themselves on the site. It is available only for preparing new items, not for submitted. And there's always helpful links. And this is a quick link here. If you have access to the PowerPoint presentation afterwards, you can click on it and access it directly. I'd like to talk a little bit about the training resources you have. So we do have an About page. So on the upper right-hand corner of Research.gov, there is an About link. You click on that, and then you click on Proposal, Preparation, and Submission, and you will get to this page. And this page is pretty powerful because we are often updating it. We are often updating the FAQs with relevant questions we are hearing at IT Up Central. And we have also introduced in the past month new and updated how-to guides. So these are different from the help, the help screens that you see. These are printable, short PDF documents that will walk you through things such as initiating a new proposal or how to add and remove OAUs. So these are really nice, handout type of help guides that you can keep at your desk. So these are just more of a quick guide for people who like help in a guide format. Resources for LaTeX users. So I have touched upon this briefly on the project description that we received a lot of feedback on difficulties faced by LaTeX users. So these are users that, instead of Microsoft Word, they are using LaTeX. This primarily affects people in the disciplines of mathematics, physics, or engineering. So we have listened to you, and we produced a page on the github.com. This is the link. If you Google NSF proposal LaTeX samples, you will be able to find it. So we have a group of volunteer program officers at NSF, and we have come together and produced 3 sample LaTeX files on the website and a sample output file. And we are constantly reviewing it and updating it with, tips and tricks for law tech users. So this is a new resource for them, and I'm hoping that is helpful. We do have a contact information on that page in case you want to contribute or you have feedback. And these are just some highlights of the features I mentioned earlier. This is an information resource page, and this is, I highly recommend joining our listserv. Our listserv here, just send a blank email here. Anytime we have major updates or major changes to the systems, we update everyone on the listserv. We have links to our compliance checking, so you can see what is being checked, what is not being checked. And then some quick and helpful links to our help and about account management. And this is a link to our ERA forum if you want to participate in providing more feedback. And then for questions, please remember that program-specific questions need to be directed to the program officer. This is our hours and contact information for IT Help Central. I always recommend that if you're encountering any technical issues, please contact the IT Help Central as soon as possible so we can get you in our queue and document the issues for your ticket. And policy-related questions, please go to policy. And thank you for your participation today. And I hope everyone has some good questions and we will answer them as much as we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to ask Stephanie to come back. There's Stephanie. And I want to thank you for your patience as we've been answering a lot of your questions in the Q&A as they've been coming in, and we'll continue to do so. And we've identified a number that we think will be of really more benefit to the larger group. So Stephanie, I'm going to go through a number of these, and I've edited some of them a little bit just so that we're all clear on what's being asked. But the first question I want to ask is about the ability to make edits to certain fields in Research.gov after a proposal has been created, fields like the title, the director. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of why Research.gov behaves the way it does and what can be edited and what can't?
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, Research.gov is a little less flexible than FastLane in terms of what things you can change after the proposal has been created. Right now, we only allow edits to the title, some modifications to maybe where to apply, where that proposal might be considered. Unfortunately, you cannot change things like the type of proposal or whether or not it's a part of a collaborative set. The reason why, or the opportunity, the main reason why we can't allow these changes after the proposal is created is that we've built in a lot of business rules and validations that are dependent on these choices that are made during the wizard. We wouldn't be able to maintain the compliance checking or the validity of the compliance checking if people are able to change and swap out the opportunities or swap their roles of how they are participating in a set. So unfortunately, the trade-off is to have stronger, more reliable compliance checking, but we would have to lock down some of these fields. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So the next question I wanted to ask you, so there are still a number or a few notifications and requests that still reside within FastLane. So can you talk a little bit about the timeline for moving the remaining ones to Research.gov?
So there are currently 4 notifications and requests still remaining in FastLane, but the majority of them are already in Research.gov as opposed to Word Action. We don't have a definite timeline yet, but we are planning to look towards the fall timeframe of this calendar year, so 2022 fall time. So look out for our announcements for that, but we are actively working on moving the remainder to Research.gov this year.
Okay, and then I guess a follow-on question to that. So a number of proposals will still be submitted in FastLane in 2022. And can you talk a little bit about FastLane's availability post January 2023 when it comes to having to do updates or notifications and requests or budget revisions, proposal file updates with respect to those proposals that were still submitted in FastLane this year?
Okay, yeah, sure. So as Jeremy mentioned, there will be proposals still being accepted in FastLane pretty late until 2022. When January 2023 comes out, when the PAPG is effective, FastLane at nsf.gov will still be there. What is being turned off is the ability to create a new proposal in FastLane. That feature is the functionality that will be turned off. Other areas of FastLane will still be operational because we need to allow PIs or applicants to be able to perform some of this, what I call post-submission activities. So for example, you may have a need to do a proposal file update, or you have a request to do a budget revision. Those things will still be available in the FastLane system. I'm going to pause there for a time. So FastLane is something we are trying to retire due to aging features of the system. I'm not going to say it will be up forever. We are having discussions at NSF of how to shorten the time frame of how long people are able to do proposal file updates and budget revisions in FastLane. So it will still be on beyond the January timeframe, but not forever, not indefinitely. So, but we haven't decided on when that would happen. If I had to garner a guess, sometime in 2023. Also, I would like to take a moment to, I've noticed some comments here, and I think people are alluding to, can I have access to proposals if I submitted them in FastLane? Would we be transferring that to Research.gov? The answer is no. If you submitted a proposal 2 years ago, you can still access that in FastLane. We are not planning to move that proposal to Research.gov. So do not treat FastLane as a repository. So just be aware of that. If your proposal was submitted in FastLane and you have to perform post-award actions, your proposal was awarded. The majority, as of today, June 2022, the majority of post-award actions are already in Research.gov. The cash withdrawals are done there. All the project reporting is done there, and most of the notifications and requests. After we remove the remainder of the notifications and requests, almost in renewals will be moved over there and supplements. So there will be no reason for you to look towards FastLane for post-award actions because all of them will be migrated to Research.gov in the near future.
Great. So we had a number of questions about roles in Research.gov and specifically the other authorized user role in Research.gov. So I'm hoping you can touch a little bit on how that role works and what they can do in the system.
So other authorized users are people who can work on the proposal. So these might be your graduate students or someone who has, someone that will be assisting in that proposal pretty heavily. They can do almost everything the PI or the co-PIs can do. However, they cannot initiate proposal file updates. They cannot initiate budget revisions. They cannot create a proposal, and they cannot initiate a share with the AOR. Only the PI or the co-PI can perform those actions. The other authorized users you can add, if you are the PI or have access to the proposal, you can add any other authorized user, but they must have an NSF ID. So you cannot add an other authorized user who is, a neighbor or someone who doesn't have a role, an NSF ID to the system. There's no PIN numbers. A lot of you are familiar with the FastLane way of adding these types of users. There's no concept of a PIN number in the Research.gov system. The other limitations for other authorized users are they cannot also be part of the proposal. So you cannot add an other authorized user if they are a PI, a co-PI, or a senior personnel already on the proposal. And I hope that answers your question.
Great. We had a question about budgets and subaward amounts not showing up on the primary budget page. Can you talk a little bit about about the budget section?
So this question I don't quite understand. So the budgets are always shown per institution. So the prime will have only their budget, their people, and then the subawardees will have their own separate budgets with their names at the top. I didn't know if Rama or Kevin had any comments on that question.
I don't have anything to add, but I think what they're asking is, why doesn't it show up on one budget screen, right? You answered the question that we separate them per organization, but I think, at least if we're going over the question I thought we were talking about, is they said it's confusing when they don't see all of them on one screen, okay, if I understood it correctly.
Okay. And I'm assuming this question was from Lindsay. If that is not answering what you believe it is, just feel free to reach out to us as well.
Okay, we got a lot of questions at the beginning about login.gov and delegations, but the questions that we've been receiving are, will NSF consider additional roles that will allow a delegate to create proposals and submit those proposals to the AOR? Currently, that has to be done by the PI, but we have heard and seen in the comments what you all are asking for, and I think that's not the first time we've heard this, but I don't know if you wanted to comment any more on that.
So right now the system is only allowing the PI to do that. It would take a change from NSF policy to allow other roles, because we need to discuss how they work. Just to discuss what can they do or not do. But right now, only the PI can create proposals. Only the PI can initiate things like proposal file updates and budget revisions. I do understand that the implementation of login.gov might make this more challenging for those institutions that don't, historically have the PI create the proposal. I'm hearing a lot of sometimes department heads do this, or people from the administrative staff who actually create the proposal at the institution. I'm from the technical side of the house. I only implement what we are told, or what the PAPG allows. I highly recommend, I think I put it in the chat as well, the feedback form. So there's a feedback orange button at the very bottom of Research.gov that goes to our business office. We need to hear about this. We hear a lot of the challenges that the administrative staff has. And to be honest, because we're not part of that, I don't fully understand some of the challenges or what are the needs that need to be met. So I think using the feedback form to kind of explain how this works would be a good start. And hopefully we'll do a little bit more in digging around of how we can help you better administer these proposals.
Stephanie, you may have answered this question and I missed it, but the question is if proposers and organizations will be able to see the status of proposals that were submitted through FastLane. Will they see that in Research.gov? Will the proposal status be seen there for FastLane submitted proposals?
Yes. So although a FastLane proposal itself, the contents of that proposal cannot be seen in Research.gov, you can see proposal status regardless of which system you use in Research.gov. So when you log in to Research.gov under the prepare proposal area, there is a link called proposal status. That link will show you all proposals that are at NSF, regardless of how they were submitted. You can see the proposal statuses there. You will be able to see reviewer comments there as well. That is agnostic to which system was used to submit. But you cannot see, for example, I want to see the budget I had for this proposal a year ago, but I submitted it in FastLane. You can't see that budget in Research.gov.
Okay, we received some questions about Science CV and the biographical sketch and current pending support. The question that I'm pulling out here is asking, or I'm framing it as how does NSF validate those specific documents in our systems once they're downloaded by the user?
Okay. So we check for certain metadata on the form. That's the primary way that we verify if the current pending support or the biosketch is from Science CV or if it's from the NSF approved fillable PDF. So we do checks on, I guess, the properties of that file to make sure it is what we're expecting. That's why I alluded to, be careful. So for example, if someone created a document Science CV, but they want to rename the file using some of their applications, that could overwrite some of your metadata. So just be careful about renaming files, but be aware that we are depending on the document to be unmodified in order for it to upload. But that's how we're verifying the formats.
Right. I see a question that was submitted, just came in about collaborative proposal submission. So separately submitted collaborative proposals. The question is asking, will it be handled the same way in Research.gov as it is in FastLane? The answer to that is no, but perhaps you could talk a little bit about some of the differences with separately submitted collaborative proposals in Research.gov versus FastLane.
Oh, the differences. I know more about how they're similar more than the differences. It's a lot more user intuitive. It's the same concept where you need to know and talk very frequently with each other. Rama, do you have comments on this? I can tell you how it works in Research.gov, but I wouldn't be able to speak much of how.
Well, perhaps you can talk a little bit how it works in Research.gov.
Okay, so everybody has to start at the same place. You cannot have people, some in Research.gov, some in FastLane. You have to designate your roles, make sure everyone agrees upon who is the lead, who is the non-lead. We've had situations where people got those confused, and then, as I mentioned before, you can't change that, after you create your proposals. So basically, you link the proposals by sharing your temporary proposal ID with each other, and the lead can start linking those proposals together. It's very intuitive, in my opinion. I hope that answers your question. I didn't know if Rama wanted to add to that, or Kevin.
I don't have anything to add, but maybe you can, and I can't answer this question, unfortunately, but one question I saw in regards to this was they were basically saying that FastLane gives you an immediate response of the proposal was accepted, but Research.gov does not, and they preferred the immediate responses. Can you answer why we don't do that?
So Research.gov, we rely on the acceptance. It's kind of like a friend request, and Facebook, we send a request, but it needs a handshake on the other side. So that might be the delay that you are referencing. You cannot, just randomly link it with others. You have to have that agreement from the other side. So that might be what causes some people to have the linking delayed like that. I've seen some feedback about people not knowing right away where to accept the linkage. I think it's not something that you see right away when you log into Research.gov. So I can see that delay where we're waiting for concurrence before the linking can happen.
Okay, the final question that I'm going to pose is really, it's a good question, and it's asking about how NSF is working to inform the community, inform PIs about the retirement of FastLane, about the migration to Research.gov. And I'll start that off just by saying that, yes, we have a very robust outreach and communications plan to reach the research community and to reach PIs. So we will be doing quite a bit over the coming months to do that. We've also been making a lot of updates to a lot of our funding opportunities where we have removed the ability to submit proposals in FastLane. So that is something that is happening all year long. We still want to see our submission numbers going up. We have noticed an uptick in the number of proposals coming in through Research.gov, but we certainly want to see more, and we hopefully our communications plan will get to that. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that, Stephanie.
No, I mean, we've done everything, like you said, Jeremy. We're actively reaching out to communities such as Incura or FDP, ERA forums, all those forums, anything that's available to us to reach out to more people. For example, we just recently had a webinar for career applicants that was really well attended, and we're having a conference here. Again, with the feedback form, if you have a suggestion on, maybe we need to have more technical webinars, we are open to those ideas. We are looking for any opportunities out there, whether it be a conference or any sort of these professional organizations to get the word out there. We're definitely updating and trying to beef up our help guides and just try to get the word out there. We're also working internally with our program officers and trying to get them up to date of what changes we're making. And they're helping us get the word out by, their own personal, Twitter accounts or their own open office hours. So we're really trying to hit both externally and internally about what we're doing and what we're communicating. So we do think we are doing a lot of outreach, but any feedback is welcome.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Take care.